offload. Welcome to not really rugby issues or U.S. rugby issues. It is prelude to the Women's Rugby World Cup, and let's get into what we're going to call it gender equality issues when it comes to rugby. First of all, in the United States, we have a severe funding. I would call it a crisis. Our men's high performance budget is roughly like maybe 10 times, probably 8 times the size of our women's high performance budget for 15s. And that's just the way it goes. So we rely heavily, the United States relies heavily on World Rugby grants to fund rugby in the United States. This is a significant problem for me. Because if you look at who's on the board, these guys are failing. But that's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about gender equality. So, the Rugby Football Union, good old England Rugby, had decided to take a step forward. First, last summer, they announced that they were going to start prioritizing 15s. And they funded 16 full-time contracts, which is, I'm guessing, was the same amount of money they were spending on women's rugby sevens. Roughly like between 16 and 20 players full-time. So, we're going to go back to that. So in February, on the 28th, the RFU announced that 10 women's sides would play in the first year of the Super League, which will start this September after the close of the Women's Rugby World Cup. These will be all professional clubs. They are Bristol Ladies, Darlington Bowden Park Sharks, Finwood Waterloo Ladies, Harlequins Ladies FC, Gloucester-Hartpury Women's RFC, Loughborough Students the Lightning side, that's like the level, Richmond Football Club, Saracens Women's Football Club, Wasps Football Club Ladies, and the Worcester Valkyries. Man, Nigel Melville, he's out there all over the place. All over the place. This would be, he left the USAR as CEO to take the position of Director of Professional Rugby, which is, I have to say, probably something that would allow you not to mess up. Because there's checks and balances. Well, I would say he messed this up by failing to promote, or choosing not to promote, the Lichfield Ladies RFC. If you look at who the Lichfield Ladies are, they have produced 6 recent English Women's National Team 15s players that were on, most recently, all 6, from what I understand, maybe it was 5 of them, were on the Women's Six Nations team. And to an extent, if you watch the Eddie Jones interview and how he talked about professionalizing women's clubs and whatnot, and how he didn't think they would draw, I will say, where we drew around 1,100 to San Diego with like no marketing, I don't know how they did that, to watch the Women's Can-Am series. My first test ever to watch in person live was USA Women versus Canada Women. They could have, to be honest, if that was marketed well at all, they could have doubled the amount of people that were at that venue. But it wasn't marketed at all. So, but that was 1,100 people in the United States going to watch, paying to watch women's rugby. And unlike the men's test, there were a lot of kids. I want to say half the crowd was children at that match. They also sold adult beverages. They also sold merch. So they made, for what they had to pay for as far as expenses. I would say as a proof of concept, people are willing to pay to watch women's rugby in the United States. Well, here's the massive difference between us and the RFU. The Women's Six Nations is a money-making tournament. And it makes money. So all of these women make money for their unions because a lot of people actually want to go to these matches. Granted, the demand isn't nearly as high as the men's Six Nations, but they aren't losing any money. They're a net gain. So in order to get back to winning 15s, when they've prioritized 7s before with some so-so results, the RFU last summer decided to fully fund 16 15s women's contracts. So from what I understand, they took money away from the 7s program to do this. But in addition to those 16 contracts up front, so I'm guessing the first 15 plus a reserve, 32 women had part-time contracts to train for rugby. So you had a total of 48 women being paid on the women's national team. This was a step forward to compare to any other nation right now. So why are we taking the step back? This is like BS. This store was broken by scrum queens. I guess we all could have seen it coming based on the previous cycle where they fully contracted their 7s team and sort of neglected their 15s team, and it took them 5 years to get back and win a Women's Six Nations title. And this was after they opened up the wallet and paid for women to leave their clubs and train full-time and then go back to their clubs and play. But they didn't have to work, 16 women didn't have to work a full-time job. They were able to train for rugby. And that shows you the massive difference in professionalism versus amateurism. You can run your club as professionally as possible and be in a relative daily training environment, but there's a difference between, what I was doing while I was in the Army and what I'm doing right now, and that's training 3 hours a day plus the regular job, Whereas these women the 16 women that were on contracts did 8 hours a day rugby. That's it. These women that were on part-time contracts were able to take more time off to focus on rugby from their regular jobs and train harder. So a daily training environment, not only of not the 4 hours that what I would call the high performance amateurism sacrifice, what you have to do to make it as an elite amateur player, but being paid to spend 4 to 6 hours a day and focus on rugby as a part-time athlete, and then 8 to 10 hours a day as a full-time athlete, was the step forward. That was the biggest step that the RFU decided to take the torch and lead. But now, following this World Cup, and maybe it's because they launched the Super League and their expectation is that the entire national team is going to be made up of Super League professionals. I don't know. I think that's a poor move, because all of the men's internationals have their Aviva contracts plus a contract with the RFU. So they're getting paid between, both contracts between probably £100,000 and £200,000 to £300,000. So that's a lot of money where you can invest in the correct supplementation and everything. So I don't know what the women were getting paid full time, but it was wages and favors in kind and everything. In the United States, our women's sevens and men's sevens, they make the same amount of money. The men's 15s make the same amount of money as the men's sevens and women's sevens when they're in camp. And we raise the money to pay the women's 15s, and when it runs out, they're kind of out of money, and they don't get their stipends. But the stipend is the same, which is favors in kind, so meals, lodging, plus $100 a day in the United States. And if you're a contracted sevens player, I gotta tell you, you better have a sponsor, because that's not a lot of money. That is $31,600 before taxes. Yes, healthcare is included and all that stuff, but that's not a lot. So for the RFU to say, hey, we're not going to have 48 contracted players is a massive step back, because you're paying less people that wage to play rugby. And you're no longer leading the women's rugby world into professionalism with that. And guess what? The RFU is rich enough to do this. In one test at Twickenham, they make enough money to fund USAR for probably 2 years. They are wealthy as heck. 250 million pounds floated into the RFU's coffers. Some crazy number. That was just in gross receipts from tickets. Okay? That didn't include the cut that they got from concessions. So the RFU's coffers are full when it comes to how much money they have and they can spend on developing the game. So it's kind of rough. So for the next 3 years, they're going to focus on sevens only. So their 15s program is probably going to go to the drink again. And their sevens might get better. I don't know. It should, but I mean, over that entire time that they've contracted women for sevens, they've, the results haven't been there for them. And maybe that's why that was partially why they shifted, because they wanted to win the big ones with their 15s. But like I said, the Women's Six Nations is a money-making business. They make a lot of money, so hopefully their stipend goes up. Yes, they won't be fully contracted, but hopefully their stipends go up so that they can take the time off to train during the rest of the year. So, bad deal, prelude to Rugby World Cup, Women's Rugby World Cup, and those issues. Shout out to Scrum Queens for breaking this story.